Hi, I'm Greg Hunter, and this is the weekly wrap-up on USAWatchdog.com. Okay, let's talk about Greece and the IMF and EU austerity deal. They've approved a deal put forth by the Greek government. But listen, the powers in the Greek government right now have a narrow, thin margin in Parliament, and it's not a done deal. It has to get through Parliament. Now, this is nothing more than a continuing saga of the worldwide war between bankers and people. The bankers made reckless investments, and they want the people to pay for it through less government programs, less entitlements, and higher taxes. And heaven forbid the bankers have to take any losses on this deal. This is just nothing more than the tip of the iceberg, and it's coming to people all around the globe, including to America. And by the way, America is the big problem in the world. I wrote about it this week on USAWatchdog.com. There's $12 trillion in liquid investments, dollars, treasuries, things like that, held outside the country. If people start selling those in mass, you could see hyperinflation in the United States in very short order. Read about it. Now, let's talk about the debt reduction negotiations in Congress. Listen, it's between Democrats and Republicans. They have apparently broken down. The Republicans don't want higher taxes and more cuts. The Democrats want higher taxes and less cuts. We'll see how that works out. But Mitch McConnell is producing a bill that says, well, we can temporarily increase the debt ceiling. I can hear ting, 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 ting. I can hear the can getting kicked down the road. At some point, America is going to either voluntarily or be forced into getting its house in order. But it will someday have to get its house in order, and sooner than you think. Syria, a big problem. One of my readers says, hey, you should talk about this. And you know what? I am talking about it because it is a big story. Now, this is all part of the Arab Spring, where they're having protest and revolution. And some of the countries like Egypt, where Mubarak just stepped down, handle it that way. Now, the military is still in control of Egypt, and one of the leading parties in Egypt is the Muslim Brotherhood, which is anti-West, anti-Israel. But on the other side of the coin, you have Syria. Hey, listen, President Assad is not stepping down. He's meeting this with an iron fist, shooting protesters in the street and sending special forces out to root out opposition. It's so bad that 10,000 refugees from Syria fled to southern Turkey. And now Turkey is talking about taking military action against Syria. This is a giant problem. Some of the other hot spots include Yemen, which is threatening to go Al-Qaeda, which is on the Arabian Peninsula, along with Saudi Arabia, one of the world's biggest oil producers. And then there's Libya. Congress and the president are fighting over whether to further escalate the Libyan conflict. The War Powers Act says Congress has the power to basically approve this and should have the power to approve it. The president says, now this doesn't fall under the War Powers Act. Well, so far, they spent $700 million in something that the president said that would only take a couple of weeks, and we would be taking a back seat. Now there's rumors of putting boots on the ground. This is a huge problem, both financially and militarily, for the U.S. There is one piece of good news, and that is that the president announced this week he's going to bring home 30,000 troops from Afghanistan by the fall of 2012. I'm sure that's not politically motivated, but we'll still have 70,000 troops in Afghanistan. In Fed news, this last week, the Fed decided to keep interest rates at between 0 and 0.25%. Listen, for all intents and purposes, interest rates are 0%. Why? Because the economy is terrible. And finally, Fed Chief Ben Bernanke admitted such in a press conference this week. He said he lowered growth estimates and said things aren't going as fast as they could. So he lowered growth estimates and still says we're on a recovery. How can something be recovering, going up, if he's lowering growth estimates? Things are going down. I don't know what he's looking at. Just this last week, the National Association of Realtors said home sales were down nearly 4% in 1 month. And is it just me, or is Ben Bernanke looking increasingly nervous and unsure of himself? I think that's a reflection of what he really thinks about the economy. And finally, J.P. Morgan Chase and Morgan Keegan this past week agreed to settle civil fraud charges stemming from, what else? Mortgages and mortgage securities. Morgan Keegan agreed to pay $200 million. Let's see, investors there allegedly lost $1.5 billion. $200 million in penalties and restitution, and investors lost $1.5 billion. Yeah, that's fair. J.P. Morgan agreed to pay a little more than $150 million to settle civil fraud charges. Of course, J.P. Morgan did not admit wrongdoing. And this is a problem I have. So far, with the financial meltdown, only three people have gone to jail. 3. That's it. During the savings and loan crisis, which was tiny in comparison, more than 1,000 financial elites were successfully prosecuted. And we've sent 3 to jail so far? You're kidding me, right? The financial system cannot sustain itself and cannot survive when you have the big guys ripping off the little guys and nobody goes to jail. They pay some small fine and boom, they're back on the turnpike going along their merry way. Well, that's the way I see it this week. I'm Greg Hunter. Thank you for supporting USAWatchdog.com.